Welcome to the Greater Culture Podcast, where we have conversations about how to elevate the quality of life through movement, nutrition, recovery, and mindset practices. And welcome to another episode of the Greater Culture Podcast with your host, Brad Marshall. And today I'm excited to be joined by Tony Oxley, someone who I met through the Best Hour of Their Day Coach Development Program back when we first started with that. And then through the years, we've continued to get to know each other through not only coach development, but also through some of the affiliate development as well. So I'm really excited to hear his story as he's coming to us from the great North, from the Midwest, from Michigan. So Tony, thanks for spending some time hanging out with me on the podcast today.
Of course. Great to be here.
One of the things I appreciate about you is learning all of the different ways in which you've had a job, then figured out what life was like when you found CrossFit and what it can be like as a coach beyond that. So it's always fascinating to me to hear people's story of how they found their way into health and fitness and coaching. So love to hear your story. Start wherever you'd like of how did you find your way into CrossFit and then eventually coaching and essentially making it your full-time career now?
Yeah, sure. I found CrossFit, 2013. My first actual workout ever in a CrossFit gym was 13.4.
So the open was your first workout.
Open, exactly. Clean and jerks and toes to bar, the ascending ladder one. That was my first ever CrossFit workout. My college roommate convinced me to try it out. He had been doing it for a while, and of course we all made fun of him because it was CrossFit, and that was 2013. And finally went with him to do the workout. It was actually at Jason Fernandez's gym, so that was kind of funny there. And pretty sure his girlfriend at the time, his now wife, we used the same weight and she beat me. And I was always the strong one, and I was like, there's no way I can let this happen. I signed up for the affiliate where I worked, and 2 weeks later. So then been hooked ever since. Yeah. So that's how I found CrossFit. But yeah, that was trial by fire for entry for sure.
The open can be both like an incredibly motivating and exciting time and also humbling, like you said, because those workouts, while some of them look so simple on paper, and then you get into it and you do it and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? Especially with skills maybe you had not been familiar with. So to do that workout and then say, you know what, I'm coming back. I think that lends itself to why CrossFit can be such a potent way for people to get fit.
Oh yeah. And I've done all that stuff. So I was very active in high school, college, I played lacrosse. So I had done overhead squats. I had snatched, I'd cleaned. So I knew what I was doing. I had to learn how to do toes to bar that day. But what was really humbling was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And then you get in there and it's like, oh, these guys are throwing around 135 like it's nothing. And at that point, I had just been running a lot, doing a lot of half marathons, quarter marathons, that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I lost a lot of strength. I could do this still. And man, was I sore after, though. That was, I think it was probably a couple of days before I could move. But then again, I was like, I'm in. I want more of this.
Yeah. What did fitness look like post college for you then? Because I think that's an interesting starting point for so many folks who are involved in a sport, work out with a team, build strength for the field, and then they get outside of college and it's like, now what do I do? So what was that like for you?
Yeah, sure. So at college, again, played lacrosse, did a lot of weight training, a lot of running with that. When I moved to Milwaukee out of college and didn't have access to really anything and was too cheap to pay for a gym membership. So what I did was the old Shaun T and P90X videos a couple days a week, and then I ran. So I took my dog out running, and like I said, got really into running, was doing quarter marathons, doing half marathons. I was pretty good at it, but that's basically all I had was just running. And I thought I was fit until, like I said, that first CrossFit workout, and it's like, whoa, that's what I need to be doing, because I had some body image issues where it's like I wanted to be a big, strong guy. And as you know, running doesn't generally get you that.
Yeah. And I think, that sounds like there was a slightly competitive outlet as well for you of challenging yourself with half marathons and the running events. So it's fun to sign up for those, prep for them, do them, and see progress of how am I getting better at this. But then you still missed out on some of the it's fun to be strong too. So where's the combination look like? And so when you did the open and then a couple weeks later signed up for a gym, What was that journey like then, starting off as a new CrossFitter? Because I do think folks who are familiar with lifting weights and working out come into this style of training, and sometimes it's a little humbling. And you're like, I thought I was fit and I thought I knew what I was doing, and now I feel like I know nothing.
Yeah. Like I said, I'd done very similar stuff to this before. Like I'd never done CrossFit per se. But when I found my gym, it was literally just opening. I want to say it opened maybe a month before I found it. And so as I came into that, I was probably one of the best athletes just because I was in shape, ran a lot, and I had previous experience with those lifts. I actually tested out of my intro because I was one of those things was like, hey, I want to start. And the owner was like, hey, well, we usually do an intro class. It's going to be running these days. And I was like, is there any way that I can start now? Like, I know what I'm doing. And so she's like, well, okay, come on in. We'll just run you through the lifts to see what you know what you're doing. And so she's just like, hey, do a push press. And I did it. It's like, do an overhead squat. And I did it. And, you just name off all the movements. She's like, okay, yeah, you can start tomorrow if you wanted to. And I was like, yeah, I'll be here. Um, so coming in with that, I mean, I was just hungry for just competition, for switching it up because probably 3 years I just ran. And like I said, done Sean T and P90X, which doesn't really count for anything. So it was literally just running. So anything other than that was just new and exciting, and I was just hungry for it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned there that the competitive drive certainly helped fuel you a little bit. So when you first started off, was that one of your primary goals, was to find local events, do the open, things like that, and that's why you like to train and get into the gym and get after it? Or what were some of your sort of initial goals or reasons that you really fell in love and liked going to CrossFit?
Competition for sure played into that. I've always just been somebody who needs to move. So I really get joy out of training. We all know that you don't need to train for hours and hours and hours to get results. However, if I had the option to train for hours and hours versus doing something else, chances are I would probably train for hours and hours and hours. I just like being in the gym. Now that said, competition was a huge factor. As you know, CrossFit, you'd have those friendly little competitions every day. Like, oh, so and so got this score, I got to try to beat that. Or if you're in the same class, that motivation, that extra little drive, helps you get to where you got to go. But then I did do some competitions. I think I did the Festivus Games once. I did another local competition in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. It was a lot of fun, and you meet some pretty cool people doing that. And like our community back then, it wasn't so big. You got to see the same people over and over again and kind of follow each other's journeys, which was really cool too.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is cool is once you start dabbling with some of that, you meet some really cool people, you get to achieve some really cool feats, and you realize what's possible. And then I think it's always interesting to figure out, like, how does that fit into people's day? Because like you said, for some folks, it's like, I go to the gym, that's my hour, and I'm out. And then for other folks, it's like, hey, I'm doing the class, but like, I really want to get better at this extra skill, or I want to spend a little extra time. So how did CrossFit fit into your lifestyle in those early days? Were you able to spend time and energy and when not in the gym, or was it like I had to be in and out in an hour and I had other things in life that I had to attend to?
It was actually the latter, because I lived in Milwaukee and I worked in Sheboygan, which, for those that know, is an hour away. So I would be getting up at 5 in the morning so that I could be on the road by 6. I'd be running or doing something, taking care of the dog. Get to the office at 7 so I could leave at 3 so I could be at the gym by 3:30 and take the class because there was like a 3:30 and a 4:30. And that's actually how I started coaching. Was the owner needed help, and she said, hey, you want to be here more, go get your level 1. I'll give you, I'll let you coach the 3:30 or coach the 4:30. So I started to have to really make some changes to my work schedule in order to make that happen, to be at the gym more often. And I made it work, but it wasn't necessarily easy. But again, it comes down to priorities. Like, what did I want to do? And I was like, well, I wanted to be at the gym. So I switched things around and got up really early to make it work.
So at what point in the journey did that happen? Because I always think that's a fascinating inflection point as well. Is, people get into CrossFit, they love it for themselves and what it's able to accomplish for them, and then sometimes they get the itch of, it'd be pretty cool to start coaching this, or sometimes it's a nudge or a push from someone else to say, hey, you might be pretty good at this. So at what point in the journey were you like, you know what, maybe I should try this coaching thing and see what that's all about?
Yeah, it was about 6 months in because I want to
Oh,
say I
wow. So pretty
started.
early. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty early. I wanted to say I started in April of 2014 or maybe 2013. Yeah, it was 2013, April 2013, a couple weeks after the Open. And then I took my level one in like around Thanksgiving that year. So Brittany, my owner slash coach, she was the one who suggested it. She's like, you want to be here more, you want to be competitive, you got to be at the gym more to make that happen. I think she also wanted a break. She was the only one coaching classes, so I'm sure she was like, yes, please take another class so that I can actually work out for once. But yeah, it's about 6 months in, and I taught in grad school. Both my parents are teachers, were teachers, they're retired now. So it's in my blood. It's something that I enjoy doing. So I think it was just a natural first step, and it just needed somebody to offer it to me to be like, oh yeah, why not? I'll take a chance on this.
It's always, I think it's at that point in time too, what right looks like is usually just whatever the owner or the coach is that you had, and you watch what they do and they lead a class and you're like, that sounds about right. I guess that's how we do it here. What was that like moving into that coaching role? Because you mentioned having some experience getting in front of a group, which I think helps a lot with presence and attitude and just running a class. But all of a sudden, when you've got a PVC pipe in your hand and you're demoing something or trying to help somebody move a little better, it feels a little different than being on the athlete side of the house. So what was that journey like for you when you first started coaching then?
Honestly, I don't really remember. That's, over 10 years ago now at this point. That said, I don't think it was that big of a transition for me. I'm pretty sure I took my level one, and then the very next Monday, I was coaching a class. Now, Brittany was shadowing me and making sure that I wasn't doing anything stupid. But like I said, I've been teaching, and I guess I'd been coaching others, in college, showing them the proper way to squat and all that kind of stuff. So I think I just kind of jumped right in, took to it like a fish to water. It just never
Mm-hmm.
really phased me. And I think partly too, as the probably one of the better athletes in the gym, people generally look up to you as an athlete. So as I took over as a coach, people kind of accepted and just knew like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, whether or not I actually did. But they trusted that I could get them moving better or faster. So I think it was just a really seamless transition, or at least that's how I'm maybe choosing to remember. Whether or not that actually happened, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that people who have some kind of background of getting up in front of others or at least leading some level of training, instruction, etc., tend to feel more comfortable just getting in front of a group and leading them. Because for new coaches, sometimes that's the hardest thing is getting the confidence to stand in front of 10 to 15 other people, even if you know them, and have a sense of confidence that like, you know what you're talking about and I'm going to lead you through an hour. So I think that certainly sounds like it was helpful to have some of that background where you can walk in and be like, hey, y'all, I know you, you know me, let's have some fun and let's work on this together.
Yeah, I would say it's nothing compared to walking in front of a lecture hall of, 150 people trying to like teach some random concept for soil engineering like I did in college. So it's like, yeah, this is easy. I got 10 people that I know your name and you know me. It's like, this is easy. Not nervous at all.
Yeah, and so you mentioned engineering. So I know your job really had nothing to do with health and fitness and wellness. And so talk us through what that process was like. So CrossFit, jumping in, started coaching. So now working the schedule to figure out a way to fit in taking your own class and then coaching class. And meanwhile, you still have this job you're commuting an hour one way for. So what was that process like, and how long did that last of committing to that type of schedule and routine?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I really liked that job. It was a very good job straight out of college. Taught me a lot. It was in my field, so I was a geotechnical engineer coming out of college. I always joke around with my intro people. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in civil engineering, and now I coach CrossFit. So they always usually get a kick out of that. Uh, but that said, really good job. Helped me make a lot of money right out of college, pay off some debt, so that I would able to make some of the life changes that I did because I was financially secure enough to do them. But it was really helpful having that job as well because they were very open minded and supportive of me changing up my schedule because they knew that I enjoyed this other thing outside of the office. And I think the worry was that, well, this guy lives an hour away. He's not going to maybe be here for the long haul. And maybe if we can get him doing stuff in the Sheboygan area, he'll stay here longer, which totally worked. The only reason I stayed at that job as long as I did was because of the CrossFit gym, honestly. There was very much in like 2015 or late 2014, early 2015, a transition where I think anybody who knew me could see the job was seeing that priorities were changing, and I wanted to be at the job more. I distinctly remember one day, I remember Brittany, the owner, was going to take her, I think it was her USAW, and had to be gone for a day, like on a Friday. And so I took PTO from the office to go run the gym for a day. Uh, and like, I loved it. It was awesome. Took my dog and just, coached, I think it was like 3 or 4 classes that day and just worked out in the middle of the day. It was great. But I think the office was like, all right, he's probably on his way out. So I did that. I worked at that job for 3.5 years, and I left in, I want to say like the spring of 2015. So about a year, what is that? Maybe 2 years after I found CrossFit. And like I said, CrossFit kept me in Sheboygan as long as I did, or as long as I was there. But I will say I didn't quit engineering just right then. What I did is I found a closer job in Milwaukee. And I wanted to go part-time, but I actually ended up getting a full-time job in Milwaukee at a larger company, and switched gyms at that point. But it was a struggle to balance it. And I think the writing was on the wall because I knew I wanted to do CrossFit more. But then it was just a matter of how long can I maintain the semblance of being an engineer.
I think that story is something that resonates with a lot of people of, they have a job, it pays the bills, it does what they need it to do. And then they find something that they're like, oh, this is what it feels like to do something you're passionate about, and like go hang out for a full day at this gym with my dog and really enjoy the work I'm doing. And it feels like you can't have both sometimes. And it feels like, well, I got to have this job so that allows me to go do all the free time. So was that something that was, playing around in your head of like, man, this job does a pretty good job of paying the bills and allows me to live a life I'd like, and I've got this thing going on that I really enjoy at the gym? So that I imagine there was some back and forth there that you were kind of weighing of like, what does this look like to either do both, or do I have to pick one?
For sure. And I think I tried to do both for a long time. And you know how it is. I mean, because you jumped into affiliate ownership, it's hard to really put 100% to one thing when you constantly like, well, I got to do this at the office or whatever, or like, hell, I got to do a concrete pour at 3, which means I can't come to class tonight. So there was like things like that where it was really frustrating. And yeah, that definitely played a role in this transition. The biggest thing too for me was the people. So as an engineer, you're doing good work, right? You're helping people build businesses. We were doing a lot of construction, stuff like that, which is all well and good. But when I saw, Jackie at the gym, like PR, and seeing how freaking excited she was because she added 20 pounds to her front squats, like, okay, that's really cool. Not that I, made a bunch of concrete cylinders this afternoon. That's what it really kind of like fired me up, is I could actually see the benefit that I was giving to people. And that just made me super excited.
Yeah, I think seeing people get excited about what can be or who they can be, it's so motivating. And every time you're like, man, I'm getting worn down or coaching a lot of classes, and then you see somebody get fired up because they learn a new skill or lift something new, you're like, well, there's the little boost of energy I needed to get me excited to keep going here. And I imagine that's kind of what it was for you too, of like, oh, I got to get up and go to work. But in the gym, I get to see somebody hit some really cool stuff. So like, let's keep working at this job for now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, both my parents were teachers. I had 2 brothers growing up. We didn't have a lot of money as children. And so I think there's always that little bit of like scarcity mindsets. Like, I need to prepare. And, a lot of my college friends, they graduated, they're buying trucks and houses and boats. And it's like, I'm still driving the same shitty car, and I'm living in a $500 a month duplex in Milwaukee, like trying to save money. So there's that as well. Just making sure, like, I don't know if I can really, quit this job, because I got to pay for this stuff, and got married in there, and paying off student loans. So a lot of that kind of stuff kind of factored in as well. It's like, I don't want to give up this steady source of income.
Yeah, man, I think that that hits home with so many folks where you're just like, oh, what does it look like? And am I trading off? Am I keeping up with everybody else? Because you get that question of like, oh, I'm going to go pursue this health and fitness thing. Well, like, when are you going to get a real job, or when are you going to do something that, feels a little bit more stable and secure? And that weighs on coaches' minds. But then I think when you think about or reflect on, just like you highlighted, like, well, if you're changing people's lives, like that's a pretty powerful thing to do as a coach and whatnot. So yeah, weighing out all those pros and cons. So getting married, switching jobs, switching gyms. So we're still sort of in that same routine. When was the tipping point where you were like, okay, the corporate life and being an engineer, loved it, did what it needed to do for me, but I'm ready to go and do this CrossFit thing at a more extensive level?
Yeah, the switch happened in 2018. So 2015 I quit that job. I got a different job in Milwaukee, much bigger firms, as a global company. And so that was a blessing, also a curse, I guess, if you think about it that way. I was closer to where I lived, so I was able to not spend as much time in the car. The downside is it's downtown Milwaukee, and even though it's only maybe 10 miles away from your house, it's still just as much time in the car, depending on when you go. I switched gyms, so that's when I started going to Brew City CrossFit, and I spent a year there just being a member, which was awesome. So going from being an athlete and a coach to just being an athlete again was a lot of fun, just because I didn't have to worry about coaching. Did a lot of the competitor stuff there. Found my best friends in the world, Fernanda. She was the head coach and in charge of the competitors, and we worked out. This is the best part. You'll appreciate this. So got a really flexible job. I could work from home. I could work in the office. I would go in early. I would leave at noon, and then Fernanda and I would work out for about 3.5 hours every day, and I would coach like the 3:30 and the 4:30 after I got that job, of course, or the coaching job. But we work out for like 3 hours every day, and then I would go home and work from home to finish off my hours at the engineering firm. And I was just like, this is sweet. I like doing this. And after a couple of years of that, the engineering started to grow really stale. Like, I'm not joking. I could probably teach you in about 20 minutes what it would take to have that job, right? It's just taking reports from last year, changing the numbers, and, putting them out for this year. And it didn't fill the cup anymore. And more and more and more, the gym was filling that cup. And then I got offered a gig as a coach, and that was like, yeah, after a year, I'm ready to step in. And they felt that I fit the culture there, and I started coaching at the gym. And it started off with just a couple of classes a week. I think it was like a 3:30 class on like Wednesday and Thursday or something like that, and then Sunday morning at like 11. And then it turned into 4 classes a week, and then it turned into 5 classes a week, and then it turned into 7 classes a week. And more and more, it was the same thing as the old job. Is I was taking PTO to supplement the income because I wasn't getting my 40 hours a week because I was spending more and more time at the gym. And then I switched to part-time at the company. And at that point, I'm pretty sure I was working close to like full-time at the CrossFit gym. Like, I was working like 3 or 4 mornings and an afternoon. So I was getting close to, probably 20 hours at the gym. And my wife was actually the one who suggested it, because she's like, you're miserable and you're making me miserable. You should just quit. Because I think I was complaining about some project or something. Oh, this project, the stupid engineers, the whatever. She's like, just put in your 2-week notice. I was like, what? uh, okay. So I literally typed it up that night and submitted it. And yeah, 2 weeks later I quit, and I was full time at Brew City. That was
Wow.
fall of 2018, I think, or something like that.
What was that experience like, typing up that 2-week notice? Because that sounds like a really fearful and anxious filled type of moment. Or was it a sense of relief for you?
It was terrifying. I don't know why, because again, I'm sure everyone was like, "Oh, Tony, what's he still doing here? He's got one foot out the door already." I'm sure everyone could see it, but I don't know why it was terrifying. It wasn't terrifying in the sense that I was worried about like financials or anything like that, but I don't know if it was just like the step of like actually quitting and not doing the same thing. Like, I went to college for this. I spent 5.5 years working towards this, and however many student loans and hours that I put into studying, and now I'm just throwing it out the window. Now, granted, to do something that I actually enjoyed doing, and at that point I thought I was pretty good at, but it was terrifying. Um, I think when I was typing, I was just shaking the entire time, and then when I finally submitted it, it was just like, what did I do?
It's funny because I think about this idea of identity and how we have just a variety of identities that, we grow up, maybe we're an athlete, we latch onto that, or we study a specific field and we sort of latch onto that, or I have a degree, or I'm a worker in this particular field, so I latch onto that. And something you highlighted there was this idea of, somebody who studied engineering was an engineer. So you latch onto that of like, that's who I am. That's what I describe of what I do to people. And now to think about shedding that and saying I'm fully embracing like coach and CrossFit, person, that takes some time and effort. And it's like, whoa, are we ready for that? So even if it was a slow buildup, I mean, there's still sort of that submitting the 2 weeks is like, whoa, this is going to be different. And I imagine that there was like not only some stress there and fearfulness, like you said, but then there's like, all right, I guess we're doing it. And so we were in it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, that 2 weeks was weird because, I don't know if you've ever put in a 2 weeks notice at something. Like at the previous company, they're like, we want you to train your new replacement and go over all this stuff and kind of like get them ready to go. So it was very busy 2 weeks. But with it was a big company. There was 100 plus people in that office. It was like, it was weird. It was, like, turn in your computer and make sure everything's plugged or, turned in by this date, and wipe your hard drive so that you don't have any like federal files on your thing and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, and then you're out and you're done. And you're like, this is weird. But
You
then,
almost hit a spot where you're like, do they even notice? Did they care that like I'm not there anymore? Like what's the deal?
right, right. And then I was kind of like, what do I do now? Because I had so much free time, a couple extra hours. Let's be honest, I wasn't working that much. But my wife, after that first week of not being at the engineering firm, was like, you're so much happier now. Like, there's so much less stress in our life just because of this. And I didn't realize how much of a drag it was until you didn't have it. And you're like, oh, I do feel better now.
Yeah. When you were thinking about submitting the 2 weeks, did you have a conversation with the CrossFit gym of like having a pretty good sense of like, hey, I'm going to continue what I'm doing, but I also have an interest in growing the work I'm doing or what I can contribute? So you sort of knew that was going to be the path, or was that a conversation that happened after you submitted the 2 weeks, or what was that process like?
I'm pretty sure that we had that conversation even before, because I think they could kind of see, just like the engineering firm could see, like, oh, he's leaving. I think that Danny and Andy, when they owned it, were like, oh, this guy wants more. Honestly, I was willing to work the mornings. And so I think they were like, sweet, we don't need to get up early and come in. And so we've had that conversation. And I think at that point, I was their number three. They're 1 and 2, and I was number three. So I was opening the gym most of the times. I was doing things like the laundry. We had teleservice, doing some cleaning, all that kind of stuff. And so I think what they did is we kind of front loaded it and gave me that responsibility that I was able to handle while I still had the engineering job. And then as I was making that 2 week notice there, I think we talked about potential ways to supplement income, whether that was personal training, whether that was skill sessions. Some of that stuff didn't end up working out because they were able to give me enough hours to make it worth my while with just CrossFit coaching and just kind of cleaning and running the gym and doing all of that kind of stuff. But it was something that we did talk about because I wanted to make sure that I didn't have too much time doing nothing, because then, what's the point, right?
Yeah, because if you're not making enough money that you feel like you need to, and you have some free time, you're like, well, I should go find something else, and
Yeah.
that's not what was going to be ideal. And so now going all in terms of working full time at CrossFit, still in Milwaukee and working there. At what point in time did you move then to Michigan? Because I know Milwaukee's no longer home. Which, funny enough, when we first started interacting in the coach development, you were wearing a Bruce City t-shirt, and I'm
Yeah.
from Milwaukee too. I was like, I drop into that gym every time I go home and visit Milwaukee. And so I was like, this guy's from Milwaukee. And then you're like, well, I'm not there anymore. So it
Yeah.
was funny how we had that connection. But now calling Michigan home, when did you transition to Michigan?
Yeah, that would have been in 2019. My wife and I kind of made this decision. I want to say it was like Christmas-ish of 2018, New Year's 2019. We made a New Year's resolution that we wanted to. Now that's a lie. 2018 it had to be, because we knew that we didn't want to stay in the city. At this point, we were living in Cudahy, which is just south of Milwaukee. Yeah.
That's where I'm
Okay.
from too. Yep.
Perfect.
My parents still live there, so I still go back there.
Okay. We were on East Hammond Street. Do you know, right by the Forge?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Sweet.
we're right next to South Swift Avenue in Pulaski, or in the park there. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I used to walk in that park every single day with my dog. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's so funny. So we were about 2 years there, but we knew for sure that we didn't want to stay in the city. I'm from northern Wisconsin originally. My wife Sarah's from Kalamazoo, but in the woods of Kalamazoo. So we knew we'd been there for 9 years. We're like, we want something different. So what we did in 2018 was like, we came up with a list of all the places that we potentially be interested to move to. And there are a couple of things that we needed. Like, it needed to either have lake or mountains or both. It needed to be a college town because we wanted to have that kind of feel to it. We needed to be, someplace that she could work remotely and that I could find a job as a CrossFit coach. And so what I did is I sent out not hundreds, but tens of resumes and filled all the barbell jobs and the Indeed and all that kind of stuff, just looking for someplace to potentially work. And we took a whole trip out west to Banff. We stopped in Duluth because that was one of the places we were interested in living. We drove out to Montana. Missoula was one of the places that we were looking at. And we kind of just stopped in, dropped to some of the gyms to see if there's some potential places, and sent out all these resumes, and nobody got back to me except for one, which is the gym up here in Houghton, Michigan, which is where we both went to school, college, and where we met. And it was funny. I think I remember going into the gym to do an intro at Brew City and just like, holy shit, like this guy got back to me and he said he wants to meet and he might have a job for me. Like, how cool would that be to go back to Houghton? Because there's this thing up here. If you go to school up in Houghton, everybody's dream is to work and live in Houghton. But the thing is, there's not enough jobs really. So there's really no way it's ever going to work. And we're like, did we just hit the lottery? Like, we get to go back potentially. So this was in like 2019, and yeah, the owner here who still owns the gym, Rob, my boss, he said that, yeah, I think you'd be a good fit. I'd like to meet with you. And so I conveniently had a bachelor party to go up to in Eagle River, drove up, stopped in Neenah on the way, met with him at a Starbucks, and we chatted. And then like 2 weeks later, he offered me a job. So then we moved.
It's funny how life has a way of, leading you down these paths, because those other locations you mentioned, like Banff, I've heard is just absolutely gorgeous, and Montana sounds incredible. And I know Duluth as well. So like all these spots, you're like, man, these are awesome. And then not settling, but like finding Houghton, which is like meaningful for both of you. And then like being the only job or only gym that reached back out. It's like, sometimes things feel too serendipitous that you're like, this is the direction that I think we're supposed to go.
Well, and it was almost like, should I send one to the gym here? Like, how cool would that be? Like, there's no way, but how cool would that be? And it worked out. Like I said, the only one to get back to me. It's like, sweet.
And so Houghton is in the UP, Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So give us just like a little overview of like, what's the town like? So small town, it sounds like, but still a college town.
Yeah, so the college there is Michigan Technological University. It's one of the best schools in Michigan, actually. It's a technological university, so a lot of engineers, there's actually a good pre-med up here. So there's lots of stuff to do up here. There's 7,000 students or so ish at the school, so it's not a big university. Houghton itself is about 9,000 people. Hancock, which is across the river, is about 8,000 people. So it's a pretty small town. But it's got a hospital and the university, which is the main employment options for you here. We do have a Culver's, so there's that. That was also a check in the good box there. But it's beautiful. As anybody who's been up here knows, it's just wooded. It's got the Lake Superior's right there. So if you like doing outdoor things, I cross country ski, I snowboard. So it was perfect for that. So it was just kind of like a dream come true. And if you like snow, there's lots of snow. Usually, last year was bad, but it's a very small town kind of feel to it. So that's kind of what we liked. There's some stuff, but it's close enough to some. I don't want to say it's close enough. It's pretty far away from everything, to be honest.
Yeah. What was the transition like then? Because I think about Brew City in the middle of Milwaukee, they'll say 400,000 to 600,000 people there. So you're not at a lack of people or finding folks who might be interested in CrossFit. And I think about transitioning to a gym in a town like that, where it's like I would assume the only CrossFit gym either in town or maybe there's one other. And that small town feel just has a different vibe to it than the big city feel. Was that challenging or different for you, or when you walked in it was like, this is just CrossFit and like I love doing this and I think I can help this community?
It was definitely the latter, but it was also a welcome change. Brew City, as I'm sure you know, is a very competitive kind of gym. It's right there next to Marquette University. Lots of young, good athletes are walking in through the door. Up here, the demographic is very different. A lot of middle-aged people, mostly we're 60 something percent women. So a lot of middle-aged mothers are in there. It's a very non-competitive group of people, which for me at that point in my life and at my current point in life, it was exactly what I needed. I was burnt out. Like I said, I've been working out 3 hours a day for many, many years, and it took its toll, both physically and mentally. And I was just ready to kind of work with the average person, right? Someone who just wants to get their first toes to bar, not worry about stringing together 20 in the fastest way that they can. So it was a really welcome change. And again, like you said, just it's CrossFit. You just kind of snuck right in and just business as usual. Took me a week to learn people's names and then, just right on.
Yeah. I think it's so cool to be able to teach the spectrum. And I think that's something I've come to appreciate about great coaches. The more I've interacted and learned from them is that they can have that full spectrum of athlete in a class with them and they can meet them where they're at and still provide some level of coaching and guidance to help them have an amazing experience and take something away from it. But it is a challenge I've seen too of when you work with that wide of a variety of skill levels and ability levels to really hone your craft a little bit more. And sometimes it's more enjoyable, like you said, working with certain populations. But I think that's an enjoyable aspect to coaching is like getting to work with so many different types of people. It's so fun, and you maybe can speak to that as well. That first person that like never done CrossFit before, and you've got like clean and jerks program, you're like, oh boy, like here we go. Like, can I teach the most basic, or the person walking in with no experience, one of the most complicated movements. But so what was that like for you making that transition? Because I do think when you talk about this idea of the gym culture being a little bit different, what the goals are, what you're striving to do, how you're trying to get through class, and maybe we're about having more fun than we are about the score on the whiteboard. You coach to those things. So what was that transition like for you?
It was tough at first just because getting to meet new people and just learning where they're at, because that's the hardest part, is just not knowing what you're capable of, and that takes a while to kind of figure that out. And then the hardest part after that was for me figuring out, well, what do you want to do? Because again, coming from that competitive mindset, it's like, all right, we're going to put some more weight on that bar. We're going to try to, string together more reps. And then it quickly dawned on me that they don't want to do that. They want to just get a workout in and head on their day. And it's like, okay, so then how do I best get you through this hour class to give me a little bit of both, right? What do I want you to do and what do you want to do? And see if we can't meet in the middle somewhere. And it just took some time to get to know them and get them to trust me. Because again, these people had been, the gym that I inherited, let's just put it that way, did not have a great rap with coaches. College town, a lot of kids coming in and then leaving a year later. It was really hard for them to hold down like a steady coach. And so I think that's what the owner, Rob, was really kind of hoping for, is like, hey, this guy wants to make this like a job, a career. It'll be really nice to have some consistency in the coaching. And I think that really is what people kind of, appreciated the most, is it wasn't just a in and out kind of thing. It was like, he's here for the while. He really wants what's best for us, so we can trust him because he's not going to be gone next year, and not worry about the whatever the bad technique that he showed me that's actually holding me back.
Yeah.
So I think that was the struggle at first, was just getting them to trust me. And then once we had that mutual trust and we knew what we were working towards, it was a piece of cake.
Yeah. And so now you've been at that location for going on 5 years now. So what are some of the lessons you've learned over those 4 or 5 years as somebody who's made coaching the full-time gig? Because I think it sounds really nice and it sounds, exciting for folks. And then like you're in it and you're somebody who's been able to make it part of your career. So what have you learned over those 4 or 5 years now of like really settling in and like, this is the gig. This is what I want to do and what I am doing.
It's a lot of work. Everyone has this misconception that it's really easy to do coaching or to run a gym. Not that I run it, but I manage a lot of the day-to-day stuff. It's a lot of work. And the thing that's the most important for the success of it is not the actual coaching per se, like how you do your clean and jerks, how you do your deadlift. It's the interactions and the relationships that you build with the people that are there. Because the people that I have the best relationships with and I know the most about and like just kind of connect with the best, they're the ones who are still there. And the ones that for whatever reason I just don't connect with as much or just don't see them as much, they go to other classes. It just seems like they're just not necessarily as bought in to the program, the working out, whatever it might be. So it's not what you think it is. It's a relationship business is what it is. It's community or not community service. It's a service industry. And so yeah, we want to teach them to squat better. Yeah, we want them to move better, be healthier overall. But it's how much do you care, and do you actually care if they're being better people and helping them get that way?
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head of people aren't as interested in what you know till they can build that relationship with you, till they know that you care. And I've learned that as well in my years of just athletes build relationships with coaches. Like they like who they appreciate taking their class. And if anything ever happens to that coach, all of a sudden, like the people are upset. And so learning that and understanding that, like that is the lifeblood of your gym is what's the coaches like and how can they build relationships with the athletes to get them to want to keep coming back, because the athletes will mingle and find their own niches and their own relationships there, but to build that relationship is really, really meaningful, and it takes work, just like you said. And making this your craft, what was your process like for wanting to get better at the skill of coaching, managing the day-to-day, building the relationships? How did you go about getting better at that yourself? Because I know you're someone who's really engaged with improving and enhancing and getting better at your craft. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, when I moved up here, I was in the process of studying for my level 3, and I was just kind of going about it, just reading some stuff and printing off the articles online and reading them. It wasn't until I believe it was COVID. Is that when that whole Jason Ackerman's thing
I
started?
feel like that's probably about when we started.
Yeah, so I was just on Instagram and studying for my level 3, and I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. You know, you're studying, you're reading, um, but it just wasn't necessarily sticking. And then I saw this thing. He's like, "Hey, limited number coaching development group." I was like, "It's kind of a lot of money, but I want to do this. Let's sign up." My wife was like, "Yeah, go for it." And that's where I met you. That's where I met Ryan. That's where I met Christian. And that group, I attribute pretty much all of my success in the past, 4 years, let's say, to that group. Thought I was a good coach. Thought I knew what I was talking about until I joined that group. And I was like, oh man, I don't know anything, which is, of course, what you want. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. So that group right there, it taught me the basics. It gave me the foundation for what I now use for my classes, for running the gym, for, providing the best experience to my athletes, got me my level 3. And then it also provided a ton of opportunities to meet some really cool people and, employment, because now I work for Best Hour as well. So that all kind of worked out.
It's amazing when you just say yes to certain things. And then, like you said, you find a group of people who care about the same things you care about, but you're open to learning. Because I certainly had a similar experience of you see what you think good coaching looks like. And it certainly was some opportunities for me to see that. But then you see what other people are doing. You're like, oh, I've never done it that way. Oh, I didn't know we were supposed to do it like that. Oh, I didn't know it could be like that. And it was just this constant learning and constant engagement, which I think was really fun to see what other folks are doing and then see if you can implement it in some way, shape, or form in your own gym. And I think that's one thing I love about that particular group was just the openness to learn. Nobody was like, I do it the best way or this is the only way. Everybody was like trying to figure it out together, which has been really cool to see how that's transformed over the years, like you mentioned, of now getting a chance to help mentor and provide feedback to other coaches. So what has that process been like? 'Cause I think there's something to be said of learning it for yourself and putting that on the floor and trying to help other athletes perform as well as they can during class. And then there's the opportunity then to, how do I help other coaches get better at their craft? So what has that experience been like now, helping out with Best Hour?
It's been awesome. I'm sure you've heard this, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so running those level 3 calls with the original group really helped reinforce all the information for me, but then going and helping other coaches improve. And I have a whole thing I've saved when people would shout out like, hey, thanks to, Ryan and Tony and Christian for, I got my level 3 this weekend. It's like, okay, that's another one in that win column. Like I help that person get their level 3. And like there's certain people, that have failed the test multiple times and have finally gotten it, and they're so appreciative. Like that is huge right there. But again, I do it for selfish reasons, because interacting with people like that makes me a better coach. Like, yes, I'm trying to help the other person as well, but like it does make me a better coach as well. And then, going back to what we were talking about earlier, coach how athletes interact better with certain coaches, whatever. With my coaches now, like that's one of my primary focuses, is to get them to be better coaches as well. And I'm using the same stuff that we're doing in the Knowledge Pro. I'm using the same stuff they're doing in Affiliate University to do that, because I don't want a bunch of people at my gym who just like Tony. I want people who are psyched and who like Carly better, and who like Michelle better, and who like Trish better. Like those, the more people that we can have in the gym that like the other coaches, like that's what keeps the gym together. And now I have a direct effect on, 120 people at my gym, whatever it is. But now I can help, 100 people in the coaching development, who are then going to go back to their own gyms and help 100 other people. Like the compounding of that is awesome, which I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, I think that for me was a big learning too, because I think you get so wrapped up in like, this is what good coaching looks like, and it has to be this specific way. And then you realize like there's so many amazing coaches who have so many different styles, and you get to see it and you get to learn from others in the Knowledge Pro and with Affiliate U. And you're like, okay, there's a lot of ways that this can look. And there's some basic foundation tenets we all want to adhere to, but like, I want you to have your own style and your own flair. And it doesn't have to be just the way that I think it should be done. And I think that's something that's been really cool too, from interacting with other folks. You're like, oh, that's such a cool way to do it. Like, I don't know if I could pull that off, but it works. And I'm glad that you're doing it, because the class needs it, and they need a different voice. Some of the cues and some of the interactions I hear from some of the folks, I'm like, I don't think I would ever feel comfortable saying that in front of a group, but go ahead and do that, because that sounds hilarious.
Yep. Yep. And there's certain times where you just got to throw it out there and just see what lands. You're like, nope, didn't work. Okay, not going to do that again.
Yeah. Oh, and so it's been really fascinating to hear this journey, because I don't think it's ever as linear as people assume it to be, of like, oh, I decided to coach and I left my job and now things have been amazing since then. It's these ebbs and turns and things that wind and weave. And along the way, it sounds like just chasing things that you care about, are meaningful to you, things you're passionate about, things that fill your cup, things that are in alignment with what you and your wife want, has been some of the core tenets that have allowed you now to find and make CrossFit a career for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really is a partnership too. So I don't want to like not give my wife any credit here. She's the breadwinner for sure. So she kept her engineering job. She's pulling in all the big bucks, and I'm just mooching off of her. But I am working. I am working. But it's one of those things where we go out around town now, and it's a weird evening or a weird afternoon if I don't run into 2 or 3 people that I know. Um, and I'm not saying I'm known in the community, but I'm kind of slightly known in the community up here, which is kind of cool. And to know that I am helping so many people be better versions of themselves, it makes it all worth it. And so yeah, the risks were there. It wasn't always, and it isn't always, glamorous, as you know, but it's worth it. It totally is.
Yeah, I just had that Ron Burgundy moment of like, I don't know if you know who I am, but I'm kind of a big deal around
Big
here.
deal.
Yeah. That has got to be such a rewarding feeling beyond just the dollars and cents of how much you get paid to do the job, but to see the impact you're making in people's lives, and then be somewhere long enough that like now you can not only just see it within the gym, but even within the community. And they're like, oh yeah, well, like we know him, he works over at that CrossFit gym and this and that. Like that is such a cool experience and feeling that I'm sure continues to motivate and get you excited to keep coming back. And along with that, one of the things that I'm always curious to hear from folks, because as I get to hear their stories and how they found what they do, I'm always curious about people's sort of principles and core values or things that sort of guide and influence them. And I think it's always interesting to hear how they are very different, yet help people to get where they need to go. So when you think back on, your experiences and your journey, are there certain either principles or core values that have sort of guided or influenced the way you think about and interact with other people, or the way you've decided to chase down this passion that you have and continue to self improve and get better and develop others that, come to top of mind for you?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you remember that one exercise that Ackerman had us do, the values one. So I like to do that one every year or so. But there's a couple that always come up. The big ones are hard work. So that's always been something for me. Growing up, I was never the most talented, never the strongest, never the most athletic. But I definitely worked the hardest, and I would put in the time. So that one has always just been just forefront in my mind. And I like to think that I have brought that on to my members as well. I think they know that, they just need to work a little bit harder, and they'll get what they want. Hopefully, if they work at it the right way. So that's always been a big thing for me, is just getting the level 3, moving, through college, switching over to CrossFit. Like it takes hard work to do that. You just got to kind of put your head down and get to it. Another one that's been really important for me, and I'm not sure what the best term to call it, but like flexibility, adaptability. I don't like to have massive ups or massive downs. I want to be able to just kind of stay nice and steady. So if you throw me something, out of left field, it's like I prepared enough, I can handle it, and I can kind of take this in stride and not act like anything's wrong. Like, oh, I had 6 people signed up and now I have 30. Cool, here's what we're going to do, and just going to go through like it's like I planned for this. So whatever that might be, whether that's in class, whether that's, a hurdle that life throws you, I don't want people in the gym to know if I'm having a good day or a bad day, because I only have good days when I'm at the gym, because that's the face that I present. And whether or not I'm, actually feeling good, mentally or physically, I don't want them to know that. And so that kind of consistency is one of the things that I've been, really tried to maintain as I go through this. And I think that the last one, this is ever since joining the coaching development group, is don't be a turd, right? Like, we all know who you are. You know what it is. It's like, just be a good person. It doesn't take a lot to be a good person. And yeah, just be a good person.
I love that doing the exercise year over year helps to reevaluate where you're at and understanding how important hard work is, how much showing up and bringing that consistent demeanor and approach to being adaptable to whatever life throws you, and then just being a good person, not being a turd. Those all blend very nicely into building a great coach, into building somebody who's continuing to help and support the community. So it's been really fun to hear your story and your journey of what that's looked like and how others can maybe relate to and resonate with it, how others have gotten to know you and how you've developed coaches. And so for anyone who's interested in connecting or wanting to learn more, what are the best ways to connect or learn from you?
Well, admittedly, I am not very active on social medias. That said, Instagram, I think my handle is @OxleyTony, OXLEYTONY. I really haven't posted much since my dog passed away, probably like 3 or 4 years ago now. Now, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm involved with the Knowledge Pro. So check that out if you want to be a better coach, better affiliate owner. Check out the Knowledge Pro. It's the best hour of their day. It's fantastic coaching development. I'm giving a plug here. I don't, this is weird. But it's great for making you a better coach. Now, if you have specific questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. My email is tony@crossfithack.com. That's HAKK. For those of us up here, it's Hakkapeliitta is my gym name, or at least I think that's how you say it. It's very Finnish. But that's pretty much it. Otherwise, I'm not really on anything. If you ever want to come up and visit the UP, I'm more than willing to take you guys on and lead you through a class or two.
I'm sure people get a kick out of the accent. Mine comes out from time to time, but Holton,
Oh,
when
sorry.
you think, yeah, when you think about how you say things in every town and word from Wisconsin, it comes out for me too. But yeah, I highly recommend checking out the Knowledge Pro. It is a fun group of people who want to get better, led by some great people. So there's a lot of fun, a lot of jokes, a lot of banter, but there is some development in figuring out how do we do this CrossFit thing a little bit more effectively. So highly encourage checking that out. Well, Tony, it's been awesome getting to know you over these years. Grateful for you taking some time to jump on and have a conversation with me, and look forward to our continued interactions as we figure out this CrossFit thing.
Yeah, for sure. This was fun.
Boom.